Greetings and thank you so much for joining me today. I am Dr. East, clinical psychotherapist, licensed mental health counselor, and I am the owner and operator of Smile Counseling Services. So today for our video, I wanted to talk to you guys about closure because I know this is something that oftentimes we grapple with, is finding closure, especially when we're dealing with relationships, whether they're romantic relationships or friendships. And so for today's segment, I wanted to focus on that. Number one, when we are finally trying to make a transition into a different place in our lives, we do need closure, and oftentimes we get stuck and we're unable to move forward in that transition. And so the first thing that we have to think about is to take full responsibility for yourself. So you want to start by asking questions, why am I holding on to this situation? Am I truly happy? What is it that I'm looking for that's going to make me happy? These are all basic questions that you want to start to ask as well as answer, because this will help you to develop a plan or at least recognize where you are in your strategy of closure. This also will help you to recognize whether you are not finding closure because you are avoiding finality of a different situation. So let's say there's a situation that you're dealing with and maybe an end of a relationship or something of that nature, and because you haven't necessarily gotten over it or begin to grieve or begin to accept the fact that that relationship has ended, then oftentimes we tend to hold on to situations because we haven't necessarily got that closure yet. The other part of that is, what are you willing to let go of? What are some things that you feel like are necessary that you're totally holding on to that are keeping you back? Are you holding on to that fantasy of that perfectly happy ever after relationship? Are you holding on to that thought process of this was the job that was going to help you to get to the next level? Are you holding on to the potential? Oh my goodness, the potential of the individuals that you're having relationships with. These all tie in and play a huge role in our inability to even start the closure process, but also to accept the fact that we need some closure. Next thing that we have to do is start grieving the loss. And what I want to talk about with this very quickly is grief is a process that we go through in different stages, and not everyone grieves the same, and not everyone experiences the same type of grievances. However, grief is a process of mourning the loss of something, and so it doesn't necessarily have to always be an individual or a person who has passed on. It can be a job, it can be your child going off to college, it can be mourning how you used to look. Women especially, we deal with that constantly. Oh, this is how I looked last year or before the baby, or those types of things. And so being able to mourn a friendship that's ending or a friend that moves away, these are all periods of mourning and of grief. And so what you need to do is allow yourself to actually grieve. You are allowed to grieve however you want to grieve, for however long it takes you to grieve. You do not have to meet society's expectations of your grief process. And that's so important that you understand that. Allow yourself to feel how you feel and be okay with that. If you, as I call it, get in your feelings on a Monday, then be in your feelings. People that support you and love you will understand that you're in that process of grief. And so it's really important to not allow others to tell you to just get over it, but for you to feel how you feel, because your feelings are valid and they're authentic. And one of the things that I often say is that in order for any healing processes to take place, first of all, you have to feel, okay? And then after feeling, you have to deal, meaning you have to deal with the issues and the circumstances and challenges that are before you. And then lastly, you can start healing because you've done those three things. You feel, you heal, and then you deal, okay? Next, you have to gather your strengths. One part of closure that we often forget is the positive part of that, which means there's life on the other side. And so what are some things that you need to do for yourself to help you gather some information, gather some insight about you? What are some wonderful things about you that you have yet to acknowledge yourself for? Make a list of all your talents and your gifts, things that you're known for. Make a list of the things that you love doing, whether that's giving back in a community type setting, whether that is volunteering, whether that is baking, sewing, whatever it is. What is it that you love to do? Do you love to paint? Do you love to sketch? Are you great at writing poetry? These are all things that are beautiful concepts of who you are as an individual. And oftentimes, when we get stuck in this rut of closure, we don't think about all this openness that we have, all these open doors that are there right in front of us because they are us. So take advantage of who you are and start surrounding yourself with people that have your vision. All the naysayers and the individuals that are going to be negative about who you are and what you do, forget them. Tell them to go, because they're not there for your benefit in the first place. Is it up to you? It is up to you to find that special harmonious place where you surround yourself with what I call a crew of individuals that are going to support you unconditionally. And so sometimes that means you have to clean house a little bit, and you have to put some people, or I call it set them on the shelf for the time being, because right now you're on a mission of closure and you need as much positivity as you can get while you're in that transition. Next, while you're doing that, is you want to make a plan for the immediate future. What are some things coming up immediately that you can start planning for and resolving? Meaning, don't wait. Now that you have a plan of attack, now that you know why you haven't gotten closure, now that you know the positive things on the other side of that, put them into purpose. Implement them, use them, start making some phone calls, go get some arts and crafts, start communicating, start cooking, start baking, do those things. This is the point of it. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work out. The whole point is that you tried something for a change outside of that negative space, which allows you to create more positive energy, more motivation. It's not about the fact that you aren't as successful as you want to be at it. It's about the fact that you even tried, and that makes a huge amount of difference in your life and your well-being. Next is create a ritual. And so what I mean by that is come up with a ceremony that allows you to get rid or to purge all that negativity from that relationship that you don't have closure on. And so this means all those pictures that are in your phone, you need to start deleting them. Don't just hide them in a little safe compartment with the password, people. Delete them, because you are moving forward, okay? The next thing that you want to do is maybe write a goodbye letter to that individual or to that relationship. This is not something that you're necessarily going to mail to them or give to them. This is for your own peace of mind. Oftentimes when we get the thoughts out of our head and out of our hearts, it allows us to be more productive instead of counterproductive, because now our mind and our heart isn't jumbled up with all this unnecessary stuff. Now we have space to take on new adventures, new emotions, new positivity, and new energies. And so it's really important that we try to get rid of all that old negative energy and all those what I call it strings that we're hanging on to, that we're barely grasping to, trying to hold on to this relationship that has long gone. And so it's really important that we start, symbolizing us moving forward by actual acts. So delete those pictures, write a goodbye letter. I don't recommend setting fires to anything, but tear some stuff up, just what allows you to purge. And then lastly, I need you to reflect. Reflect on this closure as, is it me? Am I the reason why I'm not getting closure? Am I holding on to the potential of the relationship? Am I holding on to what could have been instead of really focusing on what is? So many times we find ourselves in relationships that don't work out. And while we're in these relationships, we're not happy, we're not satisfied, because they may be abusive, not necessarily physically, but emotionally abusive, spiritually abusive, sexually abusive, or we're just not getting full, getting fed any nutrients from this relationship. And so when that happens, we end up staying in the relationship because we're so focused on the ideal relationship or the idea of what we think that relationship could be, and not necessarily paying attention to what it is. And so when we leave that relationship, we don't find closure because we are still mourning what was and not the reality. Why would you mourn someone who disrespected you? Why would you mourn someone who didn't add value to your life? Why would you mourn someone who did not acknowledge and respect and appreciate who you are as a person? You wouldn't mourn them. So let's really dissect what it is we're mourning. Are you mourning the fact that this was the first real relationship you've ever been in? Are you mourning the fact that this was the first time you've ever truly been in love? Are you mourning the fact that this was the first time you actually thought about marriage and kids? Or are you mourning the fact that you've kind of convinced yourself that this was the best you could do? Those are some of the questions that you need to start asking in order to really start putting together the pieces of why you don't have closure in that relationship. And then lastly, if you're still having a hard time coping, ask for help. And sometimes it can't just be our girlfriends or our guy friends. Sometimes we have to ask for help from someone who's in the professional setting, such as myself. Sometimes we have to reach out and find that life coach, find that therapist, that clinical psychotherapist, whomever, to kind of guide us and help us through those steps. Those are all things that are not signs of weakness, but signs of strength. Because anyone that can admit that they're having a difficult time are not only in tune to who they are as a person, but they're willing to reach out and get help from another person. And that makes you very strong. I hope that you have gotten a lot of information very quickly. I just want to give you some tips on closure and how to be able to handle that. But again, if this is something that you want to communicate further on and reach out, please don't hesitate to do so. My name is Dr. Carlia East. I am a clinical psychotherapist and licensed mental health counselor, motivational speaker. I'm located right here in St. Petersburg, Florida, Tampa Bay area. My phone number is 424-341-3278. And the name of my business is Smile Counseling Services. You can search on Google at www.dreast-smile.com, or you can always send me an email at dreast07@gmail.com. I hope this was really beneficial for you. I'm going to be going in and talking about some different subjects, and so be prepared for that. And again, take care with your hope, your healing, and ultimately, your happiness.